Hollywood. I guess the golden question that a lot of people ask, or what rather are wanting an answer to, it's where is Hollywood at in terms of their influence, and are they on a steady decline? It's a difficult question. It's not as easy as a lot of people would think because they'll just automatically say no, or rather no or yes. You find people on the other side, but I just really want to dive into this. I think the latest example of this that we're seeing is Oscars, for example. Oscars have whatever. What was it yesterday? It was the Oscars, right? If I'm not mistaken, or the other day, this past weekend. And we got the ratings for it, and they were hilariously like it's the worst ratings that they've literally ever had. Like ever. As in, they have not done worse than what they have done. What attributes to that, I think, is more so the answer that we need to seek. But it doesn't matter where you're at on the issue of Hollywood. That is something that needs to be discussed, and it's something worth talking about. When you go to an absolute all-time low in terms of your ratings, you have a problem in some capacity. How much of that is the question? I do think it's a combination of, yes, people are tired in their of Academy, just Hollywood celebrities in general, patting themselves on the back, which is all what award shows. That's all that they've ever been. And I think that the people that are generally would be interested in, certainly the buying population, that demographic between 18 and 50, if you will, they seem to be one of the more disinterested demographics, which is very odd, 18 to 40 or something like that. And you think they would be the most ripe, most prime for this sort of material, and they're not. They just simply are not interested in that, and they weren't interested in watching certainly those weirdos pat themselves on the back. So I think it's a disinterest in that, but also I don't want to completely remove the idea that they're still influential. I do believe that Hollywood, unfortunately, is still influential. I personally believe that they are on a decline. Maybe not as steep as a lot of people think. I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I do think that they're certainly on the decline. When I talk about two things being true, I think it's a combination of that as well as just the nature of social media. And these guys have run themselves thin in terms of their accessibility, if you understand what it is that I mean there. And that is that these folks are very active now because they're activists in particular, but not just that. They're very active on social media, a lot of them. So people already know what they're thinking, what their views are and stuff like that. Do they really need to watch an award show to see where they're at on certain things? So I can understand the disinterest in that while also still clinging to their words, be it on Twitter, Instagram, and whatever websites and stuff that they're on. So I think it's a combination of people being less interested, but also I can't dismiss the fact that these people are still influential on their other forms of social media. I think that still is a thing, and there's a lot of work to be done. But Hollywood, and this is what I'm optimistic about, is that Hollywood is leaving the door open for a lot of I don't want to say just purely independent creators, because what I mean, that's not really what I'm saying. It's not just, doesn't matter if they're independent or not. It's different from the usual channels, right? I think Hollywood has been able to exist without getting that big time overhaul that a lot of other industries in entertainment have got. Music, for example. Music is in a different, it looks completely different than what it did 10 years ago, even with streams being implemented, with people being able to get their work out there because of things like YouTube and all of those sorts of things. They're able to get their material out there to folks and they can consume it. And they don't have to go through like the labels and stuff like that. The music industry is still trying to figure out how to even read streams. They don't really know what counts as a platinum record. They don't even understand that. They're trying to still figure that that out because it's not a direct contrast, or rather correlation, in terms of traditional sales back in the day. So they're still trying to figure that out. Hollywood and other industries as well. Hollywood has been last as far as not getting that complete overhaul despite the technological advancements and the access that people have to certain material. They're overdue. They're long overdue, bro. And I think what you're seeing now is an opening that they're allowing us. Because what's happened is, yes, they are turning people off to their material, and people are more ripe for alternatives. Okay? Meaning that you see, or rather listen to them, and yeah, you watch a video, or rather you watch a movie, and you like the movie or something. You're a fan of the actor, actress, producer, directors, and then they go win an award off of your viewership, and then they tell you how much you suck because you didn't vote in the way that they thought that you should, or you don't have the particular social preferences or political approaches as they think that you should have. So they express how much they hate you. More people are right because more people are seeing that they don't have to take that shit. So they're giving us an opening here. And I do believe that there's a lot of work to be done, because you got to understand that a lot of these people are attached to these brands that a lot of these actors, actresses, producers, and such didn't start. Star Wars. Yet they're in charge of them, or they have roles. Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel, DC. Stuff that we're familiar with, not because of them, but unfortunately they have control in terms of the directions of those properties, if that's what you want to define them as. That is a problem. And it's hard to come up with alternatives that can compete with those, but it's not impossible. I talk about this with the comic stuff and the stuff that we plan to do. They're leaving an opening here, guys. And I hope that people take it. But most importantly, it's about getting those folks who generally would never consider alternatives to at least consider them. That's the difficult thing. I am not one of those absolutists. We talked about this last show. There are absolutists that feel like you should completely abandon any and everything recognizable. I don't expect you to do that. All I ask, 51%. That's it. So when you talk about time, effort, resources, monies, investment, instead of putting 90% of it towards people that despise you, 51% of it, just dedicate 51% of it. Make a conscious effort to go out of your way to support people, not just because they're an alternative, not just because they have said, hey, look at me, I'm not Marvel or DC. No, that's not good enough. I'm saying people that actually are good at what it is that they're doing, have passion in what it is that they're doing, and they actually deserve it. Just being an alternative doesn't mean that you deserve it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that have kidded themselves that believe that, hey, look at me, you should support me just because I'm not the big guys. That's not good enough, bro. That doesn't mean your content is any good just because you're not the big guys. Okay. But that opportunity exists. And if you guys could just give 51%, as you see them start to decline and you see people are more ripe to this, I think a lot of people think that it doesn't exist. You get a lot of people that wrongfully assume that, okay, like, for example, what happened with Parler. See, when we create an alternative, they try to shut us down. Do y'all not understand there have been alternatives to Twitter, Facebook, for example, all of that stuff that predates Parler? That's still around now? I'm just using that as an example. There are creators in these spaces that have been around, that are talented, that have just as much credentials, that are absolutely talented at what it is that they do. It's just, unfortunately, I think a lot of people, I think some of this has to do with politics, right? Because a lot of people that tend to be that mind of thinking where it's like either you're apolitical, you're anti-political like me, libertarian, conservative, non-traditional, non-leftist, let's say that, in which you will at least consider the other people's political positions and whatnot, and you don't base your entire like hatred on someone based upon whether or not they, just how they approach a particular social issue. Those guys have tended to be, unfortunately, the people that neglect culture. And that's the harsh reality that a lot of people don't want to come to terms with. I talk about conservatives and libertarians that have acted as if that's not been a thing or of importance for decades, for a very long time. In fact, they've shunned a lot of them. Conservatives historically have been bad on things, for example, like video games. Right? Been terrible. Absolutely terrible. Doesn't mean that the Democrats, when you consider, them, you know what I mean, the Hillarys and the Bills, but the Republicans for sure have been absolutely terrible on that. Even Trump was fucking blaming video games for violence and shit. So they haven't been that good in like embracing or seeing investment in that sort of subculture before, right? They've neglected it because they like, hey, look at me. I have the best ideas. You guys are stupid. Who cares? Hollywood is just there to entertain me. And then you forget how influential that stuff is, certainly for generations coming in, right? When you got guys like, I can't remember homie's name, who sit over talking about for you guys that sit up there and play video games. What's that conservative commentator? I can't remember his name. Aubrey Huff. Yeah. And he's like, when was the last time you got laid? And I'm sitting here like, yeah, bro, that's for sure gonna get people to be more open to your positions, man. That's gonna do it right there. By what a ripe demographic to who should care about liberty, people that would generally value liberty, that should. It goes both ways. Yeah, they can effectively be trying to keep you out while you also not producing anything or not wanting to invest in the people that actually are in those spaces because you think that it's a silly, trivial thing. That has to obviously change because you see the outcome now, right? You see that influence mattered. That influence mattered to an entire generation of people. So leftists, for example, have control of everything. Your children's education and public indoctrination camps you guys dropping them off at. The music they listen to, the media that they see, that they consume, their favorite actors, their favorite musicians are of the authoritarian left. That doesn't mean, though, however, there aren't investors that are in these spaces, just general customers that are interested in these subcultures. That doesn't mean that y'all are powerless. No, it just means that maybe, like them, take a page out of their book and actually go out of your way to see if that stuff exists, because you'll be surprised that if it does. I will continue to use this as an example, not because I'm begging for a sponsorship or an endorsement or something. I'm just using it as an example. I am, for example, one of the biggest liberty-minded black content creators, and by content I mean like literal, like not just making videos on YouTube or gaming. I'm talking about like with the music and stuff like that. One of the few hardcore metalcore artists that isn't a raging leftist, that actually is decent at what it is that we do, but we've seen success, right? We've charted Billboard. We've done all that. We've did it number one alternative new artist, number 2 Heat Seeker album. Backwards, we've been there and done that. And I say all the time, if anybody want to take a wild guess at any of those investors or their own businesses, conservative or libertarian, freedom-minded, liberty, anti-political, any of those investors that have reached out to me to either work together, endorse, sponsor, if anybody wants to take a guess, you're welcome to take a guess as to how many of them have ever reached out to me. We do this like every other show. It's a goose egg, bro. None. I've never gotten that. You can get guys, however, with half of my following, not even half, a quarter, for example, that exist on Twitch. They'll have like 16 sponsorships. That may seem like a trivial thing to you, It's an example, though, however, of their utter neglect for those spaces. It's not just that they push you out. It's that, number one, you don't actively seek it. And maybe number two, you don't think that shit is important. You don't think subculture, stuff that necessarily isn't political, as important. I think a lot of people have woke up to that and starting to see that, however. I think, hell, even my own growth, not necessarily from the investors and such, but from just people coming and being aware of my work, is evident of that. Hollywood's leaving you with the same opening that a lot of us musicians got, with just being able to have a direct line of sight with the audience. Now, the question is, are people going to take it? Are people going to actually beat on their craft? Are the customers going to go out of their way to seek that? Or will they just continue to feel like the only legitimate or valid stuff is the stuff that is authorized by the bigger institutions, such as that are generally centered around, in this case, Hollywood? We'll see. But Hollywood absolutely is, in terms of is on the decline. But I think that's more so in the fact that people are more ripe for this. So I encourage you guys, whether you are actor, actress, filmmaker, producer, create. But most importantly, invest in it and get good at it. Because don't think that you're awarded or owed support simply because you exist and you're not the big guys. And for you guys that are generally customers that look to consume and be a consumer, you know what I mean? And I don't mean that in a negative connotation, like a literal consumer, like a person that consumes, you know what I mean? Something. You are you didn't create it, but you value that entertainment in this space in some way. Hopefully you guys just to go out of your way every now and then. 51%, that's all I ask. I'm not one of those irrational people that say, stop just watching it. No, I'm not expecting that. I think that's unrealistic. I think 51% you guys can give in terms of your effort investment to just alternatives that you'd be surprised exist. They're in basically every sector. They're liberty-minded, libertarian, apolitical, people that don't hate people, that are generally in the more moderate, that don't hate people just because they don't think like them. There are plenty of those people that exist in all of these subcultures. You just got to find them and stop treating those as trivial things that don't matter, because they absolutely do. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.